Hey, welcome back to the channel. I want to talk about one of my favorite, I guess, warm-ups, you could call it, something you can do at the very beginning of practice for 5, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 if it's something you're incorporating into the session as well, that gets your players engaged physically, gets the blood pumping, gets them focused, gets them ready to go. Other than I think we've all seen what can happen at times if we start with something that's just a basic technical drill and no defense. You don't get a lot of urgency. Players maybe aren't locked in mentally, and you feel like you're wasting time. So here's something that, first of all, is an important part of their development as well, and that is a the most one of the most basic rondos or keep away possession games that you can have, and that is the 4v2. Now, you may have to adjust if you're a 7v7, 9v9, the size of your roster, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I just want to go with what it is. Let's say you've got an 11 v11 team, and I'll work the way back, so don't worry about that if you have, like I said, a smaller roster. So you basically are going to run three games, three rondos at the same time. As you can see, I have them set up the 4v2, the 4v2, and obviously the 4v2, and you're going to run them at the same time. And your players are going to keep track of how often they go in the middle. And that is, the players starting in the middle, they're at zero. Okay. So I guess in a way, you got a little bit of an advantage if you stay in on defense. But each player has to keep track of how many times they go into the center. And then you're just going to run the three games. Now, hopefully, this is something you also do in your training session as well. So you've taught the points of the game, the open body position, all those different things, splitting the defenders, all of those things that are important. And then what you're going to do with these three games is, if this is something you do, and I get maybe you don't do it every practice, maybe you do it once a week or what have you, but you keep track of those numbers so that it changes each week, kind of like promotion and relegation. Maybe to add an extra incentive if you want, maybe those in the top tier, like this, let's say this is, the top league, maybe this is the English Premier League, and over here is Bundesliga, and over here is MLS, and you want to get to the top one. So, in other words, one down bottom left is two, bottom right is three in this case. And so each week, each time you do this, you adjust. The players who have been in the middle the most in the top league, they're going to move down. They're going to move down the next week. And then the two players who were in the middle the least in the second one, I'm going to do yellow just so we have different colors. They move up, right? So now they move up a league. And then same thing over here. The players who were in the middle the least, they're going to move over here, and the players that were in the middle the most here are going to move over here. And obviously, the players in the most, they're staying anyway. So each week you adjust, and players can move up and players can move down. So you add that little bit of competitive element to it that gets them a little more engaged in the drill. Now, you're also going to have your players sort of be able to communicate and work out issues, because like I've said at times is, let's say we make this player in the top, we're looking at the top here, right? They make a pass to this player who gets a touch, but it's really the pass is what caused the defender to get a touch on the ball, right? So it's really the passer who should be going into the middle more so than the player that might have actually lost the ball. And of course, you're also going to define what exactly is gets a player in the middle. At the youngest of ages, it might be literally they have to get possession of the ball, or at least get a solid foot on the ball. Whereas where they're a little older, they're a little more skilled. Maybe it's the defender just getting a decent touch on the ball, right? Maybe this pass happens and they get a foot on it and it still goes to this player. That's something you're going to have to work out or have your players work out. So you get a little bit of that communication too, because we all know when you see those iffy plays where it's really maybe the passer that should go in the middle, they don't really volunteer at times as well. Now, if you have a 7v7 roster, maybe all of these are, 3v1. instead. Maybe you're running a 3v1, which is still a fantastic drill, and you also get you get more movement from the outside in terms of these players, right? Because if the ball's here, this player's got to quickly make this run over here, which is another example of the communication and who goes in the middle. Because if they're lazy, if this ball goes from here to here and this player doesn't do their job of busting their butt and getting over into this position, and then of course they also need to get an open body position, right? So that ball can be taken like this. If they're lazy and they're not quick enough to recognize and they don't get over in support and then this player loses the ball, it's really this player, the blue player, that should be in the middle. But so maybe you have a 12-player roster at 7v7 or even 9v9, and so they're all 3v1. And maybe you don't. Maybe you can't divide it that way. Maybe you've got a 4v2 and two 3v1s, right? Maybe you have a 14-player 9v9 roster. So I understand there's going to be some adjustments and things like that, but I think it's a really good way of getting your players energized, breaking a sweat, being focused, being competitive as well as getting a lot of quality touches. You're going to see a more intense version of this 4v2 than you might otherwise see when you're just doing it as a normal situation to within your practice. Maybe at times you might need a maybe you need a coach at times to fill in just as a player on the outside. Maybe you have an assistant coach could do that. Maybe you have a parent. Right, if it's a 7v7 and it's young enough, you might have parents they're hanging out and watching practice. Maybe you have a parent that's played or at least is athletic enough or good enough that they can be an extra player to make a what would be a 3v2 into a 4v2. And of course, they're not going to go in the middle, though. If they mess up, it's just, keep going, keep going. But yeah, anyway, I think that's a fantastic way to get started with your practices. I think you'll enjoy it. Your players will enjoy it. Like I said, if you want to do something where the players who end up in the top league at the end of the season, or if you want to keep running numbers, the players who just go in the middle the fewest times. Ooh, sorry, I just sneezed like 18 times. Allergies. But anyway, I just want to leave it there. I don't want to go over and over, say the same thing a million times. But as I was saying there to finish up, maybe you do something at the end of the season for the players that end up in the top grouping. Something simple. I mean, again, youngest ages, maybe it's a sticker, maybe you just, you went to one of those sites and you got those rubber bracelets or whatever they can get a million of, and you've got your team name imprinted on them or whatever, something like that. Maybe you get that. Maybe it's t-shirts. I don't know, come up with a cool saying. Again, there's so many easy things you can do nowadays with stuff like that that don't cost a whole lot, that can be an incentive for your players as well. So anyway, if you're enjoying the content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment below if you have questions about this. I'll be happy to answer them or do an entire video if it's a topic that deserves one. And I'll talk to you in the next video.